see any. We'll move on then. Next item.
Item 6, Go Topeka 2013 Financial Statements and Auditor's Report.
Good evening. I'm Morgan Paget with Mayor Hoffman McCann, and we were engaged to perform an audit of the 2013 financial statements for Go Topeka. So I want to take you through tonight the highlights of two things. One is the audit report and the financial statements, and two is our letter as auditors required to the board. I'm going to start with the financial statements. And the first thing I want to just point out in that is page 1 of our actual audit report, which is our auditor's opinion. And it lines out what the responsibilities of management are for the financial statements, what the auditor's responsibilities are, and then gives our opinion. It is a clean, unmodified opinion, so there are no material misstatements. Some things I want to just point out as we go, reminders we go through. These financial statements are on the accrual basis, and they include all activities of Go Topeka, where you see in quarterly statements just the public funds. This includes all of the funds. So we did audit all of that. So clean opinion, no material misstatements, which is positive and good to see, and what we've had in the past years as well. I'm just going to point out highlights. I will answer questions, of course, if you have them. But as we go through looking at the statement of financial position, this shows the assets, liabilities, and net assets. Some things I want to point out, there are some pledges receivable, both in the current assets and the long-term assets. If you remember, back in 2012, Go Topeka did do a campaign to raise some private dollars. And under accounting standards, when those pledges are received for multiple years, that's all booked in the year that was received as revenue. So what's here, though, is the receivables from those. So $653,000 we expect to collect in 2014, and then the long-term piece and other assets of the $1.9 million, what we expect to collect in 2015 and after. Those have all been discounted for amounts that may be uncollectible. There's also a present value discount calculation in that as well, but those are what the current carrying value of those are. Back up in the current assets, the restricted funds, $5.7 million. That is two things. One is the escrow account that was established as part of the Mars incentive. They're required to fund some amounts in advance in there, so those are the amounts that are held in there. And then new in 2013 is an escrow account for the air service grant funds they got in 2013 that they'll be using in future years to meet minimum revenue guarantees. So those funds are held in an escrow, and we'll look at a footnote later that gives you the breakdown between those two accounts that makes up the total of 5.7. So total assets at the end of 2013 are $23,600,000. Looking down at the liability section, the first one there is the deferred JEDO grant revenue. Those are funds from have not been spent yet, and you have given approval to carry those over into future years, so they're recorded as deferred revenue at this point. There's also deferred air service grant revenue. So I mentioned they did receive some funds under that air service grant that have not been spent yet, and they were recorded as deferred revenue, and they'll be recorded when the funds are actually spent. The improvement and training incentives liability, $4.2 million. Those are amounts that have been earned for Mars that have not been paid yet. Mars has earned some things for construction and training that have not been paid from the escrow account, but they will be here, probably mostly all of them in 2014, so we have that entire amount booked as a current liability. Net assets is the difference between your assets and your liabilities. So net assets at the end of 2013 are $11,478,000. Most of that's unrestricted. That's $8.8 million. Of the unrestricted piece, there's an amount that the board has designated for future incentives. That is $7.9 million. So that's the land that we hold for development, and also some amounts that are in the escrow account that from Mars that hasn't quite earned yet. But most of that is land that they hold for future incentives. And then the temporarily restricted net assets is related to the pledges. There's an implied time restriction in those funds because they'll be collected in a future year, so they're shown there as temporarily restricted. We flip to the next page. Statement of activities shows revenue and expenses. If we look in the total column for 2013, there was $4.2 million in JEDO grant revenue recorded. Those were revenues recorded when funds are actually expended. So we expended 4.2 under that grant. They also there's some private contribution dollars. There were some additional pledges received at the beginning of 2013, so that revenue is all booked in that year. The net assets released from restriction has no impact on the bottom line. It just moves amounts between temporarily and unrestricted, but that is pledges that have been received. So once the funds are collected, the time restriction is released, and that just gets moved to the unrestricted bucket. So for the year, total support and revenue, $4.5 million. We look at expenses, there was $4.8 million in economic development. That's going to fluctuate from year to year based on what we've gotten and what we have in incentives. Almost $2 million of that for 2013 is related to the utility extensions that were paid for and expensed in 2013. The rest of that is then incentives that have been earned or land costs or those sorts of things. We've got general and administrative expenses of $237,000 and a small amount of fundraising expenses as well. Gets you to total expenses of just over $5 million and a net change in net assets of negative $557,000. Okay. The next page, I mentioned before, these statements are on the accrual basis, but what page 4, the statement of cash flow, shows you is kind of more on a cash basis, where cash went to and where cash came from. We have net cash provided by operating activities for 2013 of $141,000. So day-to-day operations generated $141,000 in cash. We also then had some cash inflows from investing activities of $1.6 million, result in a net increase in cash for the year of 1.7. In the investing section, a couple of things. The proceeds from sale of investments is really just funds that we moved from their money market account into the checking account for $1.3 million, and then there is the proceeds from the land they sold to Questar for $264,000. The bottom half of that page is just a reconciliation from the change in net assets to operating cash, just a different way to show that section. Okay, we start at the footnotes on page 5 of the audit report. The first several pages are the accounting policies. They'll start at footnote number 2 there, and they go on. There are no changes to the accounting policies and no new ones, so nothing I really want to touch on there, but note those have not really changed from the last couple of years. If you flip to footnote number 5, which is actually on page 9 of the financial statements, I mentioned the pledges. This gives you a little more information on when those funds will be collected in 2014 and beyond, and also what the uncollectible amounts would be and the present value discount of $98,000. Footnote number 6 touches on the fact that they do obviously own a piece of land at Kansas Fire and Central Crossing. They have the option to purchase additional land there, and it does go into explain the land that was sold to Questar, the 24 acres for $264,000. Footnote number 7 is what I mentioned before. This gives you the detail as to what's in those 2 restricted funds, the 2 escrow accounts, the incentives one, which is all Mars, and then the air service one. So you can see the air service obviously started in 2013. The air service one was funded by $1 million from Kansas Department of Commerce, and then the airport authority also kicked in $250,000. So that's what was the end of that fund. There were some payments, some expenditures made in 2013 for some advertising, but the most of it will be spent going forward.
If I could, just to make sure that, for clarification, so although it's administered through Go to Topeka,
Correct.
It's not actually funds from the sales tax.
That's exactly correct.
Good.
Yep. There's also a more information than you probably want, but Transit Authority has a federal grant that they're going to be using for matching funds as well. But this funds is all from either the state or money that the airport authority kicked in. No sales tax dollars, yes. We flip to the next page, footnote number 9, related party transactions. This does explain the reimbursements that Go Topeka makes to the chamber. These are all for salary and benefit costs for Go Topeka employees. Go Topeka itself has no employees. All employees are paid by the chamber under a common paymaster agreement. This is the reimbursement from Go Topeka to the chamber for the salary and benefit costs for Go Topeka employees. The total for the year was $815,000. We've broken out for you that JEDO grant funds paid $456,000 of that, and the remaining $359,000 were paid by private dollars that were raised from the campaign. And then at the end of the year, Go Topeka did owe the chamber just a little more than $84,000 for those reimbursements that were paid after year end. And it does go on to speak too that the chamber leases some space that Go Topeka uses, and so Go Topeka pays the proportionate share of that space that they do use. And the expense for that year was $77,000 in 2013. Okay, the JEDO grant is explained at the bottom of page 10 and onto the next page. It just, on the top of page 11, mentions that there was a carryover that was approved, and so that's in deferred revenue, and that of the amount that's in deferred revenue, $540,000 is deferred for the minority and women-owned business program. And then it does go on to say, too, that the contract was extended for 3 years beginning in 2015. Okay. Footnote number 13 mentions that there was $1.7 million in cash incentives paid during the year. That includes both incentives paid to companies and also required funds that were deposited into the Mars escrow account as they were required. So that was there. And then at the top of page 12 outlines under current incentive contracts what they expect to pay out in 2014 and after. Those have not been earned yet by those companies. They have not been recorded as an expense or liability, but if they do meet those, these will be the amounts that they expect to pay under those current incentive contracts. And then number 14 just mentions the amount that was expensed for the utility extensions during 2013. Are there any questions on the financial statements that I can answer?
As always, there's usually more information in the notes than in the audit.
Yes. Yes, very true. Very, very handy to have those. There's a reason they're required, I guess, right? So,
Are there
last.
questions
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
regarding the audit? Or the footnotes regarding the audit?
No.
All right,
Okay.
seeing none.
Perfect. The last thing I want to go through with you is our required communication to the board that you did have a copy of. It is a required communication to the governing body. When we do our audit, we're working mostly with management. This is our report to the board as to how the audit went, essentially. This is a very clean letter. There are no concerns, but I do want to walk through some of the kind of highlights. Under significant findings from the audit, it does mention, like I said before, that footnote number 2 explains all the accounting policies. There are no new policies, no changes to policies, and that all transactions were recognized in the proper period, which is positive. There are some estimates in the financial statements. Not everything is known 100%. The one estimate we mentioned there is the value of the pledges. There's a lot of estimate in what we think is going to be uncollectible, what the discount rate should be. And as auditors, we come in and just evaluate management's assumptions and make sure they're reasonable. So we have done that. We had no difficulties in dealing with management during the course of the audit. At the top of the second page, we did make a couple of small adjustments during the course of the audit, but they were very immaterial and they've all been corrected. So that's reflected there. No, there are no disagreements with management during the course of the audit. We have obtained from Doug a representation letter that says what he gave us was correct. He was honest, he was truthful, given us everything that we've needed to do the audits. We did have that letter dated May 1st. We're not aware of any consultations with other accountants, and any conversations that we may have with Doug during the course of the year is just part of our normal working relationship and not contingent on us being hired as the auditors. So just normal stuff. Again, a very clean letter. I do want to point out, too, that we did not have any internal control deficiencies to report, so there's nothing there to issue a letter on that on. But this letter is just a required communication. It's all very clean, very pretty standard language.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
I see that there are 3 members that have signed up for public comment regarding the audit. First would be Jim Mullins.
Thank you. My name is Jim Mullins. I have been working for Americans for Prosperity for a little over 7 years. I am retiring at the end of the year, so the boards of county commissioners and city commissioners are not going to see me for a while, and some of them are very glad to see that. We at AFP have done a number of audits ourselves. Performance reviews is what we call them. Performance review is different than an audit in the sense that a performance review, we're trying to find out what have the city or the county we've done used the money. Have they used it properly? Have they done it so forth and so on? Part of the problem we have with this, and I would like to ask the accountant if I could, are you using governmental accounting standards?
Sorry, Mr. Mullins, you have to direct your questions to
Okay,
the
well, the
chair.
question, would you be there? Did they use Gatsby or did they use GAAP standards?
I believe that on the note, I'm sure I'll be corrected.
I didn't see it in there. It said accepted it. What the note said in there was they've used auditing standards generally accepted in the United States. I'd just like to know which one they used.
I don't think it's as a question for the.
Well, we either go to
Auditor,
PGA or their
sorry.
accountant.
Sorry, for the auditor, it was at Gatsby or the,
No, that audit is not done under GASB rules. It follows financial statements. Just regular GASB rules,
Okay.
not governmental.
It's under governmental, general accepted accounting standards. The reason I bring that up is that you all, as city and county commissioners, are under different rules. And one of the reasons why the GATSB, Governmental Accounting Standards Board, uses those standards is because you can see a lot better while the taxpayer dollars is being spent. Right here, we're seeing a lot of things being spent, but we don't have any clue what they're being spent for. For instance, and I couldn't quite hear what she had to say, but one of them was in the report here. Let me find it for you. Is it under number 13 under incentives? Is less board designated employment incentive held in escrow? Who's that for? Is that for one individual? Is that for multiple individuals? That's just an example of where we don't really know. And this is taxpayer dollars that they're spending. It really would be nice to know, are they spending those kind of dollars? Under GATSB, GASB, you would better know who's getting that money. And you would better know how that they are meeting the criteria of being accountable and transparent with the people's money. And that's really what we're about as AFP. We've gone forward and say, we are about transparency and accountability. We've done performance reviews on Johnson County government, the city of Topeka. We've done it on Sedgwick County. We've done it on Lynn County. We find out a lot of things that they've done. We haven't hit those people over the head with it because we went to them and said, look, here's some things you're doing that you need to correct. Under the radar, not to the media, to them directly. And they made those changes. That's a good thing because they want to be accountable just like we want them to be accountable. So what I'm suggesting to you is go to Topeka next year when you have an audit, do it under the GATSB and make sure that they have the right accounting codes, a lot more codes to be able to determine whether those funds are being spent and who they're being spent on. Thank you.
Thank you. Next for public comment is Carol Marple.
My name is Carol Marple. I'm not a CPA. I'm just a taxpayer that pays this tax. And I had some questions, and I wanted to ask how the auditing firm was selected.
I believe that they would be selected by the Go Topeka board for that purpose of the audit.
Is it not the duty of JEDO to select the auditing firm? Did I not read that in the bylaws of JEDO?
I think if maybe if
I'd have to take a second to look that up.
it may have. I'll have to take a moment if we can answer that question at a later time.
Okay.
For you, Carol.
Because Go Topeka is who's being audited, but they select the auditor, is what you just said to me. And then my other question is, the same firm that audited Go Topeka, are they also auditing the Chamber of Commerce?
And that I don't know the answer to. So
It was the same last year, and I think that is not a good thing because they work so closely together. My other question is, I do read this, I don't always understand it, but there was a letter included in the packet dated May the 7th from Mize and Hauser auditing firm. And they said that management has elected to omit substantially all the disclosures ordinarily included in financial statements prepared on the modified cash basis of accounting. If the omitted disclosures were included in the financial statements, they might have influenced the user's conclusion about the company's financial position and the results of operations. Accordingly, these financial statements are not designed for those who are not informed about such matters. I don't understand that, and I'd be happy if somebody could explain it to me. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eckert, do you have an answer to the?
Yeah, it is in the interlocal that Go Topeka shall also, at the conclusion of the agreement year, order a certified annual audit by a certified public accounting firm selected by the JEDO. completed in accordance with the generally accepted accounting principles relating to the finances related to this agreement, and make the audit results available to the JEDO. So you do control who does the audit each year.
And it would also indicate as to the manner in which the audit is done with the general accounting versus a Gatsby, so,
Yeah, that's included in the same sentence. So if you wanted to switch to a Gatsby, we'd have to amend this rule.
all right. Thank you. And our final speaker tonight, or comment, is Joseph Ledbetter on the audit.
I too have a concern about this letter that was part of your file, and I noticed that nobody up here asked questions about it. I'm gonna put it into the record. Management is elected to omit substantially all disclosures ordinarily included in financial statements prepared in a modified cash basis of accounting. Please put that in the record. We just heard on the last item, which was actually an action item, and the public should have been allowed to speak. Anytime you're receiving reports, like an audit, that's an action item, and the public has a right to speak on any of those items, and I did ask for the right to speak.
And I'll just, Mr. Ledbetter, I will let you know that prior to the commencement of the meeting, I did consult with our legal counsel. The presentation of a report is actually a non-actionable item, and our rules of operation do indicate that the public is allowed to speak only on actionable items, and so that does fall under our rules of operation.
Well, since I'm a lawyer, I'll dispute you. It says presentation, and then it says overview of a first quarter report. First quarter financials. First quarter financials is a report. It's not a presentation. Wasn't talking about the
I'm sorry,
presentation.
we're at the 4-minute mark, so we
All right.
need a motion to extend, or that would be the end of it.
I did not get 4 minutes.
Oh, yeah, you did.
No, I didn't.
I hit 4 and then the beeper went.
I have only been up here about 1 minute.
Is there a motion to extend?
Or to give me my
Move to
time.
extend. How much,
Well, I'd like my time, 4 minutes.
move to extend for 4 minutes?
Motion to extend for 4 minutes. Is there a second? Second by Deputy Mayor Everhart. Roll call.
Commissioner Bueller? Yes. Commissioner Cook?
Yes.
Commissioner Archer?
Aye.
Mayor Wolgast?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Everhart? Yes. Councilmember Hiller? Yes. Councilmember Schmidt?
Yes.
Sorry. And if I'm discussing with the chair, the time stops. That's the rules we've always operated under. It's very important that JEDO pick the auditor, and that's apparent. I have a number of questions about the audit, and I'm going to start asking them on the record. First off, I want to know if this firm does the 990s for Growth Organization of Topeka and the Chamber of Commerce. Could I get an answer from their auditor, please? That's a question about public money.
This is a public comment, not public question.
Public question about public money. Oh, so I'm being overruled? I can't ask that question
This is
of
public
the
comment.
audit through you?
This is time for public comment on
Okay,
the
so
audit.
you're ruling I can't, that question's out of order?
This is a public comment.
Okay, so you just made a ruling. That question's out of order. I want to ask, who did the 990s? Because under the 990s, it talks about a management fee, not money paid back to the Chamber of Commerce for employees. The management fee that's of record, the 990 that's of record talks about a $811,000 management fee paid to the Chamber of Commerce by Growth Organization Topeka in 2012. I want clarification about that management fee. That is not reimbursement. I want to know if this audit included property taxes that are paid by Go Topeka with our public money. I want to know if they used appraisals that are public on the valuation of the land that they are holding. Asking a question. Am I being overruled? That's out of line. I want to know how much space Go Topeka rents under this audit. It says how much they're paying for. I want to know the square footage. And I want to know how many employees are in that square footage. Will you ask that question, Chair, of the auditor?
Again, this is a time for public comment on the audit.
Okay, so that question also is out of order. I'm asking the audit firm, are they familiar with Publication 5.5 about, with the IRS, about excess benefits paid to board members, or, I'm sorry, to officers of nonprofits, including the type that GoToPeak is? Did you ask that question? If they're familiar with this document? Okay. Non-responsive. I want to know if, you say that GoToPeak has an open door policy. Does JEDO have an open door policy to receive questions and get answers? I'm asking you, the chair. Does JEDO have an open door policy to the public to take questions and get answers?
Mr. Ledbetter, I think that, again, this is a time for public comment.
I made it.
As an aside, I don't know if there's a phone call I haven't taken from you. And I would assume that it would be the same with the rest of the members as well.
Will you get the answers for us with our public money, sir?
There's not a question I haven't answered for you yet, Mr. Ledbetter.
You're going to get a whole bunch of questions,
Thank
okay?
you.
And I hope I get answers that are direct, more direct than I'm getting tonight at this meeting. Because this is a public meeting, and I'm not getting answers to good questions that should be asked by the JEDO members themselves. That's it.
All right. Is there a motion regarding the audit, or are there additional questions regarding the audit? Councilwoman Heller.
Is it appropriate to make a motion to accept the audit?
This would be the time now to make a motion to accept the
Be
audit.
happy to do that.
Motion made by Councilwoman Heller to accept the audit. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Archer. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Bueller. Yes. Commissioner Cook.
Yes.
Commissioner Archer.
Aye.
Mayor Wolgast.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Everhart. Yes. Councilmember Hiller.
Yes.
Councilmember Schmidt.
Yes.
Next item.
Item 7, public comment.
2 members have signed up for public comment, first being Carol Marble.
Carol Marple, and I will say again, I'm just a taxpayer that pays this money. As I started to say before, after it was voted on to award Yantra some incentive money up to $100,000, I thought I would take the time, I assumed that you folks had, and do some research on Yantra. I spent approximately 2 hours. I am not that computer literate, so it probably took longer than it would take most people. I was left with a lot more questions than I had answers for. Most of my information came from the Secretary of State, Chris Colback's office. And I also want to make the comment on public comments. I want to read it to you. This is in the minutes. Mr. Ledbetter asked of Mr. Kinzinger, he wanted to know if Yantra was a member. Well, Mr. Cook, Commissioner Cook actually asked Mr. Kinzinger, is this company presently doing business with GoToPeak? Mr. Kinzinger replied no. I would like to hand this out because the answer is yes. It was on the website of the Chamber of Commerce. Commissioner Cook asked Mr. Kinzinger that before this proposal was brought forth to the JEDO board, the question for Mr. Ledbetter is whether or not the GoToPeak board approved it. Mr. Kinzinger said yes. As I said, is anybody doing their homework? I also want to make the comments of, since it was not addressed here and I've asked the questions before, I'll report to you that the work on 77th Street has started again. I would like to know when the Kansas Fire Park will be shovel-ready. I would also like to say again that I think JEDO, Shawnee County, the city of Topeka, sets a very poor example when they own land and do not take care of it. You try to enforce laws that people must take care of their property. I think that should go for you folks. I also looked that on the cash statement, you spent $378.72. That was publication for the expense of the RFP. We had an RFP out there that was worth over $15 million, and we spent $378 to publicize it. I don't think we allowed enough time. I would have to question again how well it was publicized. And that's really all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker tonight on public comment is Joe Ledbetter.
We know from looking at the minutes that were presented tonight of the last meeting that the RFP was never received or voted on. That is problematic. We know from the minutes, according to the county counselor, that it was publicized on various websites, including to an organization I checked was across the state line. So I'm not going to comment on the cost, but I'm going to comment that it was public. And because it was a public RFP, when that RFP was accepted, the terms of that RFP were accepted, like it or not. Go Topeka is going to have to be transparent with this money, like it or not. We were told tonight that there's an open door policy at Go Topeka, but we don't know when their meetings are. We were told there's a Go Topeka public policy of being open, yet we don't read their minutes. We can't get their minutes. We don't know what they do with $5 million of public money every year. Veterans are suffering all over this community. There's 16,000 of them in this county. Go Topeka doesn't have an answer for how to deal with veterans and their economic woes. I brought this up to Go Topeka people before. We have a growing poverty rate, up 50% in 1 decade in this city. Where's the answer from Go Topeka? There isn't one. We're not even allowed to go to their meetings. And when we come to these meetings, we're not allowed to comment. We ask where the money is on the quarterly financials, which is an action item that you're receiving. You need to do a better job of structuring these agendas. There are more action items embedded in some of these items you're calling presentations. We get to talk about those at city council meetings. I've done it many times. I've asked where many expenditures went, and I've gotten answers. And I should get the same courtesy as a citizen at these meetings and get direct answers as to where that money's going. We have shown tonight that, again, this money is not transparent. Do not vote for a sales tax extension unless you like money that is not transparent, that is public money being spent willy-nilly. We don't know where. We can't get a record. We can't get minutes. We have no clue where it went. And we have audit reports we can't get answers on. This is not transparent. This money has been proven by this meeting to not be transparent. Again and again, it's not transparent. The public does not get its questions answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions by members of the board? Mayor Wolgast.
If I may, I would like to say to the board members, the voting members, that I have confidence in this JEDO board. I think it does an appropriate job of handling the affairs. There are always things that perhaps could be done differently, but I feel confidence in the chair and the voting members. I have a confidence in Go to Pica and in the economic development of the activities. And we always can look at things differently, but I think there are many things that are done very well. And I think I want to acknowledge that fact.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Are there any others? Seeing none, brings us to the end. We are adjourned.
I don't know. She didn't even close the deal on her thing. I was interested. She had my attention.